Hello, this is Veterans News, a production of the United Veterans Organization of Nassau County. My name is Ed Allman. I'd like to thank Altice USA for providing the training for our crew and for the use of their studio facilities here in Hauppauge. The show is broadcast on public access channels at a time we hope is convenient for you. You can also catch Veterans News on YouTube. Just go to Veterans News UVO. I'd like to say hello to our viewers in both Nassau and Suffolk County. I'd also like to thank Sabrina Lacey, former commander of the Suffolk County VFW. Welcome, Sabrina.
Thank you, Ed.
I'd like to thank our crew on camera one, Loretta DeBrino, our video director, Beverly Allman, our director, Bob Lane, and our floor manager, Pat, what's his name, Galino. No, I know his name. By the way, if you'd like to ask me a question, make a comment, or you would like to become a member of our crew, notify me at veteransnewsuvo@gmail.com. We need members of the crew. Please think about it. If you'd like to volunteer some time to help veterans, you too can become a volunteer on Veterans News. You'll find it quite rewarding. Remember, email me, please, at veteransnewsuvo@gmail.com. Our guest today is Frank Amalfitano, director of, I have you down as director. Are you the director?
Executive Director, President, CEO.
Executive Director, President, and CEO of United Veterans Beacon House. Sabrina and I will ask our guests some questions that I hope you would like to know the answers to, but I hope some of our camera crew will also ask some questions. So camera crew, it's up to you to yell out some questions. We'll talk to our guest in a few minutes, but first let me remember some of the veterans who died recently. Benjamin Chernowski, an Army veteran from East Northport who was captured at Normandy by the Germans. Joseph Saul of Bethpage was in the Army and served in Germany during the Korean War. George Grosskopf of Port Jefferson, an Army veteran of the Korean War. Lawrence Herbst of Plainview, a proud Navy veteran. John O'Connell of Bayshore, a Navy veteran during World War II, and he served aboard the USS Auburn. William Wilson of East Meadow was a proud member of the Destroyer Escort Association. Robert Harding of Roosevelt was a recipient of the 2012 Congressional Gold Medal, a World War II Marine. John Dean of Lynbrook was a Purple Heart recipient and Army veteran of the Vietnam War. Lee Oliver, a Navy Seabee during World War II, lived in Bethpage. John McCrank of Long Beach was a retired Navy commander of the Vietnam era. Michael Frizzoli of New Hyde Park was a Navy veteran. And lastly, but not lastly, because I think Sabrina has somebody for us.
Yes.
But the last one I'm going to mention is Kathleen McLaughlin, a woman from North Merrick. She served from 1944 to 1946 in the U.S. Navy. Sabrina, did you have somebody that passed away?
Yes. Vic was our house chair at the Brentwood VFW for 35 or more years. Him and his family, we want to give our blessings to them and for his service, and he served in Korea as well.
Vic,
and we will all miss Vic.
what was his last name?
Yakowitz, I don't want to miss
Vic Yakowitz.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the end of the Veterans News for now. Now it's time for our guest. Hello, Frank.
Hello.
How are you?
Fine.
Good. Frank, you're from Beacon House. What is Beacon House?
Beacon House is an organization, a 501c3 non-for-profit, community-based grassroots organization that serves veterans in the community. We
Okay.
serve veterans from throughout the whole country, actually, they come to us, but predominantly Nassau and Suffolk County and the 5 boroughs.
Okay. We'll talk to you about Beacon House in just a few minutes. But first of all, I'd like to know about your military background.
I was in the Air Force. I joined the Air Force right out of high school in 1966. I got trained as a security policeman, and then as a security policeman, I became a canine handler. I spent a year in Vietnam and was discharged in 1970. And in 71, 72, I joined the Army Reserves for a year.
What a canine handler? What was that?
Well, we patrolled the perimeter of the Air Force bases and vital installations within the base, like rocket silos, aircraft, and also at times I was assigned to base police. I rode rode throughout base housing and the entire Air Force base up in Plattsburgh with my canine.
When did you first meet the dog? When did the airmen and the dog get together?
Well, after I qualified to become a canine handler, they sent me to Texas, and we trained. At that time, all the training was done in Lackland Air Force Base in Texas. And then from Texas, I'll give you a quick story. I trained with a dog there named Marshall M095 was his brand. Went back to Massachusetts. I got orders for Vietnam. He got orders for Germany.
The dog.
The dog,
Got
which was a
orders
good
for
thing.
Germany.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had 3 dogs while I was in the military. One stateside, the first one that I trained with, then one in Vietnam, who died in Vietnam of the effects of Agent Orange, and then my last dog was up in Plattsburgh, that was my last duty station, Plattsburgh Air Force Base, which, by the way, the chill factor up there on the flight line was 65 below at times.
Wow.
At 20 below, we take the dogs in. The dogs come in, their paws start to freeze.
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of dog did you
At
have?
that time, they were all shepherds. Or
Shepherd, German
different
shepherds.
mix of shepherds, German
Yeah.
shepherds, yeah. And now I believe they're different.
Okay.
Frank, what was the lifespan of one of those serving dogs that were serving in the military? They were initiated as we are as a veteran dog, right? What was the lifespan of an average dog, you would say?
It was a normal lifespan for a canine at the time. What was mostly different at that time, most of the dogs that I recall came out of, they weren't bred by the Air Force. The Air Force went to different dog pounds, and they took the dog. There was a training, and the dog had to pass the training to be qualified. So not every dog made it.
Mm-hmm.
But most of them they took from different pounds, dog pounds, around the country.
Yeah.
Actually.
How old were they? when
Well, they tried to get them as young as they could. At that time, between 2 and 4 years old,
Right.
when they brought him in. My dog in Vietnam that died, he was 8 years old when he died.
Really?
Yeah. He was a good dog. His name was Jeff.
Okay.
So what we want to say, the viewers and myself and Ed and the news, well, we're glad you came home, and thank you for
Yeah.
your service to our country. And like I said, and our prayers to your loss of your dogs. And we also know that you lost some of your fellow comrades. So we understand that. But one thing we want to say, Frank, we honor you and we thank you for what you continue to do, even though you went through all that in 1967. 67?
What? Well, 66 to 70, 68, 69,
Right.
Vietnam.
Right. And you're still serving us now. It's a wonderful thing. And one of the questions I have for you is, how do you and your leadership ability continue to serve us veterans, your community, and your family? And you've been doing this for how many years?
Well, I became the CEO of Beacon House in 1999, but I was a volunteer prior to that. Probably 1996 it started.
What did you do for a living after
Prior to
the
that?
service? Yeah.
Oh, various things. I landscaped. I was a landscaper. I worked for as a landscaper. Then I worked on the Long Island Railroad for 2 years. Then I mostly drove heavy equipment, trucks in particular. Then I was an owner-operator for Levitt's Furniture for 7 years.
Levitt's Furniture, an
Levitt's
owner
Furniture.
operator?
Yeah, delivered furniture.
Oh,
And on the 5 boroughs in Nassau and Suffolk County. Kept me in shape.
Right.
Over these years, what would you tell the viewers is one of the most rewarding thing for you as a volunteer and as a worker to veterans over all these years that you have given to
Well,
veterans?
that's really simple. When you see somebody, most of the veterans I deal with, because Beacon House deals with veterans that suffer from substance abuse, PTSD, and TBIs. Most of them, I would say like 95% nowadays. In the beginning, it was 100%, but we've expanded our services. So is to see someone get on with their life and get quality out of their life. That's the most rewarding part.
Yeah. The thing that surprised me is you mentioned that you handle 44 homes now,
Yeah,
homes for veterans,
we manage 44 different locations.
and you have how many employees?
Somewhere between, with part-timers and per diems, about 125.
125 employees,
Yeah.
44 locations that house veterans.
Yep. We've assisted over 20,000 vets
That's what
since
I was
1999.
trying to figure out. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, by assisting them, you also give them direction. So if they don't know where to go, they're gonna send someone to you after you take care of them. And you, from what I hear from the community, you don't turn any veteran away. You always give them guidance to some place to go.
Yeah, we try
resources.
to help everybody. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but we do try. We try our best, and so does the staff. My staff. We try not to. Even when someone doesn't want to follow, we do have rules, because when you're managing group homes, you have to have rules, or else
Right.
you have chaos. So we don't never put anybody to the street. Never did that. Never will. Not as long as as I'm the CEO. So we'll. If it doesn't work out for someone, we'll ask them where they want to go, or we'll suggest a place to go.
And
But
how do
never
you,
to the street.
Frank, how do you coordinate, because now with a lot of women veterans coming back, and they're coming back with families and a lot of divorces going on in the family, how do Beacon House handle those type of issues with women veterans with families and so forth?
Well, we house veteran families. We also house women vets, but on a smaller scale. The majority of our veterans are single adult males. So, but we work closely with the Northport VA, especially with the social work department. So social work will call us and say we have a problem with we have a family that has a problem, they need housing. We specialize in housing, and we'll try to assist them the best we can. We network with every organization on Long Island, the charities that also provide housing. So we'll try to make contacts.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have funding sources over and above our grants and contracts through United Way, through our fundraising. So sometimes we have put families in hotels until we can get them stabilized into an apartment.
If I can be a bit of a low person here, the thing that I always thought of when I hear of a group home with veterans or non-veterans, but there's a bunch of single fellas living together in a group home, I just imagine that there's problems, that there's a lot of drinking going on, drugs going on. How do you stop that? How do you prevent that?
We do intense case management. I have a case manager assigned to every one of our locations, including the family locations. There's a case manager assigned to that. And the emergency shelters, there's entire staffs 24/7. On the transitional houses, we have one 24/7 staff, because we have 8 transitional houses. And in each house, there's a house manager.
Right.
So the house manager, if there's a problem in the house, the first person he'll call, unless it's an emergency, he'll call the case manager, and we respond immediately to any disturbance.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people come to us to have problems. And you got a problem,
Yeah.
come see Frank. That's what the veterans tell me.
I know I called your office a couple of times, because what we do at the Brentwood VFW, we go out into the woods and we try to get the veterans to come back into civilization. So I called up and they told me to bring the veteran down. We walked the veteran to the Beacon House, And then we had your staff, and your staff would interview the veteran and find out where the veteran needs to go. The veteran was told to go to the Northport. We drove the veteran to the Northport. You had the Beacon House there, so he got into the Beacon House. This was a veteran who was going to go to jail probably for 6 months to a year. He lost his family. His family moved to Florida, and he was at his wit's end. When you put him into the Beacon House and he stayed there, and then the Northport collaborated with you, he only had to stay there for a couple of months, and he chose to stay there for over 6 months. When he finished, the Beacon House was there. I was there when he had to go to court and so forth, and we all collaborated together. He wound up finishing off his system. He became drug and alcoholic free. His family found out how he has changed mentally, and he wound up getting a job at the Northport. Today, he's working at the Northport, and he has a job. He has so many different skills, and now he's back on the right track, and he hasn't fallen through. And that was because of the collaboration of, I'm going to say, the VFW to the Beacon House to the Northport. And that Beacon House really served its position with us, because what we used to do on Sunday is to bring those veterans, because there's nothing to do, down to the VFW, and we would bring them back afterwards. We were engaged with them, and we'll find out what their needs were. Now, since that program is not there at the Northport, our facility has changed now, because we don't have our program going on, because the Beacon House is having some diversity of getting itself up and running again at the Northport. Can you elaborate on that, Frank?
First I'd like to say, point that you just brought up, the collaboration with different organizations. So it holds true that sometimes it takes a village to help one person. And especially, I've learned over the years, in many cases, that's been the norm. You can't do it by yourself. You need help. We've had the facility at Beacon House at Northport. It was a 25,000 square foot facility. We were awarded the contract 3 years ago. We're going into the contract would have been in its 4th year this year. It was a 5-year contract. So because of some mechanical failures, the electric, the water, the heating, the HVAC system, the VA came out of Washington down to the VISM. The VISM is a you know what the VISM is? For people that don't know what the VISM is, the VISM is a group of 14 in this area, 14 VA hospitals. There's approximately 21 VISMs across the country. There's one VISM director that she monitors all the VA hospitals in her VISM, and also, what do you call them, down in Bayshore, the clinics.
The C-Box.
Yeah, all of them also throughout the VISM, which is several of them. So the order came down to shut the building down. Not only did we have to vacate the building, also the VA staff had to vacate it. So it wasn't just Beacon House that left the building, it was the VA staff left the building. They felt it wasn't safe because the temperature was, this past winter was cold, and the temperature was really dropping drastically on some days. So this was an ongoing issue that needed to be addressed immediately, which they have addressed it immediately. So what they did with us, I don't want to get technical because this gets very technical, but we relocated, by the way, we relocated in 24 hours.
Right.
I was given 72 hours notice, and I moved 34 people. At that particular moment, that particular day, we had 34 residents.
Were they
at
veterans?
Northwood.
All veterans. Were they
Men and
upset
women.
about being moved? Because, veterans, we
Well,
don't like
they
to...
were confused.
Right.
Where are we going? What are we going to do? So I managed to get a facility in Bayshore. Through a friend of mine, introduced me to a landlord that just happened to purchase 2 houses on one piece of property, and I relocated 18 veterans to that particular piece of property. We've had another shelter out in Riverhead. We had some openings out there. We put some veterans in there. We have a HUD program that had some openings. We put some veterans in the HUD program temporarily. And then we have 7 grant per diem houses, and we put the rest of the veterans in there. We managed to house all 34 veterans within Beacon House's organization, within our 44 locations.
Do you think the house is going to be open again soon? in Northport?
Well, they fixed the HVAC system. From what I understand, it was over $1 million repair. They fixed that, but they found other issues now. So we were supposed to be back there August, September the latest. Now I was told by the interim director that's there now that there's other issues that have developed, and they're working on those issues.
How long has it been since the place has been closed?
It's January 14th,
Yeah.
I think.
So we're going on almost a year, Ed, right? Would you assume, right? Almost a year now, come January, right?
Well, come, yeah.
Right.
Come
So,
to-
Frank, all these months, there's other veterans coming through the Beacon House that should be going over to the Northport. So if they have an issue of a high magnitude, because you usually send them over there, if they're totally homeless, where are they going now?
Well, this has been an ongoing problem because actually that facility was 44 beds, and 18 were
Right.
funded by the VA, 24 were funded by Suffolk DSS, and about an average of 6 were funded by Nassau DSS. I know the numbers don't add up, but it turned out to be 44 by the end of the month because we were only allowed 44 beds in there by the OTDA standard. That's the Office of Temporary Disability.
Yeah.
All right, so to answer your question, we've expanded our grant per diem program. Now we have 70 grant per diem beds. But we've managed through HUD-VASH, the HUD-VASH program. We're involved in the HUD-VASH program. We network with Concern for Independent Living. We've, and the VA has like expedited, accelerated moving people into the HUD-VASH apartments. We've worked with other organizations too, such as SUS and his SSVF program,
Right.
Supportive Services for Veteran Families, which also they have in that program they could find housing for veterans outside of HUD-VASH. It's an ongoing process because the veterans have to qualify and they have to be sustainable. You don't want to put a person into a situation where they're going to fail and be homeless again. We try to, make sure they can sustain themselves.
The Nassau County has recently made a statement that there's no homeless veterans in the county anymore. But most of that has to do with you, I think, in that the homeless are living in some place that's available to them. Do you have any openings for homeless now?
We do because the program's like accelerated. Our grant per diem program used to be a 2-year program, and now it's anywhere from 90 to 120 days, and then into housing. And in that shorter period of time, we also managed to help people with their sustainability, education. Part of sustainability would be employment, or entitlements. We help them with entitlements. We're big on entitlements. That's one of the first things we look at when they walk through the door. You believe it or not, there's Vietnam vets that don't know they're entitled to service-connected disabilities,
Right.
or don't know that they're entitled to Social Security. Some of them, they got problems, and many because of their substance abuse issues, have child support issues. So we help them with that too, and so do the colleges. There's a lot of colleges that have legal staff that will help. So it's a network of organizations. I don't know about saying there's no homeless vets on Long Island, but this I can say, that we can house a homeless vet in 24 hours. Well, I couldn't say that 20 years ago. I can say that today with all the networking that we do.
Well, Frank, I can say there's homeless veterans in Suffolk County because I know where they are. And I know that when Thanksgiving come, I will be out in the woods and the VFW, the American Legions, all of them will be getting together to feed them, all right, and to clothe them. They're not going to come out because they don't have a cell phone to tell you that, and they don't have the statistics for those veterans, all right? Those veterans do not want to come out. So if we go out there and we talk to them, and if they decide that they tired of it and they want to come out, then we could bring them to the places like the Beacon House. But if you bring somebody like that to a church or somewhere else, they're not going to be well accepted as if we would take them to the Beacon House, because I have done it, and it's not happening. Yes, there are homeless veterans in Suffolk County. All right, and we're not going to go give our social security numbers and our names to those people because they don't want to be recognized in that entity. However, they still going to work and doing what they have to do. Would you agree, Frank? Homeless veterans is not like they used to be, standing out on a corner, because we in Suffolk County begging for a nickel or a dime. There's a different ideology of what a homeless veteran is. But the basic foundation is they don't have a place to live, to clean themselves, to clothe themselves, and provide shelter for themselves. Mentally, after you be out there a couple of months or years, you lose sight of what you need to do. So that's where the organizations like the AMVETS, the VFW, the American Legions, we're reaching out there for them and pulling them out of their trenches and saying to them, no, the American society care about our veterans. We have our own veterans taking care of veterans, like Frank here and Ed here with this news program that we have. Would you agree with that, Frank?
Oh, yes, most definitely. I've come across working veterans that are homeless, living out of their cars, or living from, you know, today HUD says if you're sleeping on a couch, you're not homeless. But, you know, that's it. They're sleeping on couches with a bag right next to their side, ready to move. And as soon as the owner of the couch says, you got to go.
Frank, if somebody walks into one of your locations and says he's a homeless veteran, but he doesn't have any proof that he's a homeless veteran, what do you do?
We take them in on a humanitarian basis, just like they would at the VA. So they would, if they walked into randomly in any one of our facilities,
Right.
My case manager would bring them down to headquarters. They would do an intake, and then we'd place them in a shelter, one of our shelters probably, and then we'd start the process to find out if they're a veteran or not, as they claim, you know. And then if they are a veteran, are they a veteran that's entitled to benefits?
Right.
You know, if they're honorably discharged.
Right.
You know, so that's how the process starts. And if it turns out they're not a veteran, then we would also find
Turn them
other
over to-
alternative housing for them,
Right.
other than veteran housing. Yeah.
Okay.
We do have a civilian program. We've expanded our mission to assist other than veterans to create jobs for veterans. 50% of my staff are veterans. They work for me.
Okay. So, Ed, what can we do about this situation with the Beacon House not being open at the Northport for over 6 to 8 months? What can we do about this at this point? When I did the research and I looked at different veteran administration, different hospitals that take care of veterans, like the hospital in New Jersey and one in Massachusetts, and I compared, they're taking care of their homeless veterans. They have places and different type of facilities to house their veterans. We only have a small area of a Beacon House at the Northport, but we have the second highest amount of veterans in the nation in Suffolk County. So what can we do, Ed, in terms of helping
Well,
the
I can
situation?
elaborate
Well-
on that answer,
Yes.
if you like.
Sure.
Sure. Well, the only one that could tell you if that building is going to be reopened and Beacon House is going to be allowed to go back in there is the VA. And the one person that's in charge
Mrs.
of this
Cruz.
area, no. It comes right out of the VISM. Joan McInerney, she's the VISM director. So any and all organizations that want to make inquiries, they need to inquire to Dr. McInerney in the Bronx. She has an office in the Bronx, and she has an office in Albany. That is the only person in the VISM that has the
Right.
final answer to whether the building is going to be reopened and allowed veterans back in it.
Okay. We'll try to get something in writing
To,
as soon as we can.
and maybe we could, Ed, you think maybe we could get Joan here to speak, and probably maybe she would be able to give us some information?
From the McInerney?
Yes,
We can ask her.
yes. I mean, we have over 10,000.
We're running out of time.
Yeah.
Frank, thanks a lot. Thanks for
My
coming
pleasure.
here. Loretta,
you.
can you get behind the camera? Come on, get behind the crew.
Yes.
Who's the rest of the
Okay.
crew?
He's in front of the camera. so-
Okay. Okay, everybody, thank you very much for watching. I hope you can see the show again this month, and I hope you see us again and again in the future. Okay. That's it. Okay, we have the credits on the screen. Things are good.